Hey, hey! Nintendo just seems to be full of weird surprises recently, and I most certainly did not expect a surprise this weird coming out of a Nindies Showcase. There's always that little thing in the back of my head that says this is a Nintendo presentation. There's always a chance there'll be that kind of big, huge bombshell. And in this case, I thought that bombshell, it wasn't even exactly Cuphead was like a really big one. I was like, wow, that's really cool. That's about as much as you can expect from these Nindies Showcases. It's just indie games. So like, you know, a reveal for a really big, cool indie game that everyone really wanted to come to Switch. I thought that was the best of it though. So then we get this. Then we get this at the very end. So in case you don't know, Crypt of the Necrodancer is a game that came out some time ago. It's on the Switch, and it's basically like a little, randomly generated dungeon crawly game, but the whole thing is that it moves to music. Everything, it's like turn-based, but it's like really fast turn-based. Everything you do is to the beat of the music. Every time the music beats, you're moving, or you're attacking, or you're doing something. I have not played it. I have always looked at it and thought it looked pretty interesting, and I always knew one of these days I would try it out. I just never really got around to it, having a hard time telling if I was going to enjoy it or not. I'd really like a demo. That'd be really nice. But I do know the soundtrack is amazing. I've listened to that a number of times. So here we go. They bring up this thing. They say, hey, from the makers of Crypt of the Necrodancer, it's a Zelda Crypt of the Necrodancer. It is called Cadence of Hyrule. And this is a real thing. This is a real thing that's happening. And this is really unusual. It really has taken my brain a while to wrap itself around like what this is and what it means. Nintendo is no stranger to, crossover kind of stuff. In the past, I would say a lot of what they've done, the cameos, we have had cameos of Nintendo characters in other games. In my commentary thing, I brought up when Link was in Soul Calibur. But that was just a character in Soul Calibur. That wasn't a Zelda Soul Calibur game, you know what I mean? We have had things like Hyrule Warriors, where a pretty darn big company works with Nintendo closely to do this kind of crossover thing. Another good example is Puzzle and Dragons. They did a Mario one, and on the 3DS, they released a version that had the original Puzzle and Dragons game on it and a complete Mario one. And the thing about that, though, is those kinds of games and like Hyrule Warriors, those come out as like Nintendo games. They were made by another company, but Nintendo still kind of keeps them under their own umbrella and publishes them themselves and almost treats them like a Nintendo game. You know what I mean? In Nintendo Directs and stuff like that, it gets advertised as such. It really feels like a very big collaborative thing between Nintendo and the other companies. And usually they're bigger companies, especially Hyrule Warriors. And then Puzzle and Dragons, I know the original is just a mobile game, but it's a pretty big mobile game. So you're looking at a pretty prominent, mobile studio, whatever. But this, Cadence of Hyrule, is particularly weird. I mean, for the most part, the biggest part about it that's weird is that they wouldn't reveal it in a Nintendo Direct. They actually put it in a Nindies Showcase, and that's what's so interesting about it. This is an indie studio. They're successful. I'm sure Crypt of the Necrodancer was pretty successful, but it's still a relatively small indie studio. And I don't know whose idea this was. I don't know if they approached Nintendo with the idea, if Nintendo approached them, or what. I'm not really sure. But basically, they're still treating it like an indie game. The fact, I don't know, maybe I'm putting too much weight on the fact that it was in the Nindies Showcase, but to me, this feels like a new step forward in the potential of Nintendo crossovers and other people utilizing their IPs, I really have to look at this and wonder what it means for Nintendo and their relationships with indies. It really does feel like it is opening a door, It's kind of rewriting the rules, because when you look at this, you have to wonder, what are the limits now, what Yacht Club Games could come out and be like, hey, the next Shovel Knight expansion is Zelda or Mario or something, or like Metroid. They absolutely could, and that would be just as weird as what we have now. Any indie studio could just say, because it's like, I don't know. Another thing about it is that it's different when it's just like DLC. You know what I mean? Like, I've seen plenty of games where they'll have a themed kind of crossover DLC, like a kind of a short campaign. Defense Grid 1, they had a whole campaign with a GLaDOS from Portal. It was pretty fun. But that's not what's happening here. This is a whole game. They're advertising this like it's its own game. This is a Zelda Crypt of the Necrodancer game, and I just love it. And it's awesome because it's really beneficial for everybody, you know what I mean? It's especially beneficial for these indie guys. You know, they're like, hey, we made this game, we have this audience, we sold these, you know, make a Nintendo-themed one. You are playing to that gigantic Nintendo, you know, install base and getting people's attention. So, you know, they get money off of that, but then Nintendo gets to lend their IP to them, so they're probably getting a lot of royalties off of that. And it's just awesome. Everybody wins, especially us, because we get to play these interesting combinations now. Like I said, I was never sure if I was gonna like Crypt of the Necrodancer, but I'm easy, man. It's easy to get me. Just put Zelda on it, and now I'm like, well, now I'm gonna play it. Now I'm super interested in playing it. And I love this because it really, I say this a lot. I've been saying this a lot, but it's true. Like, Nintendo has been growing so much. They've been growing so much in the last few years, and this is yet another thing that says something about them and where they are. It was already really, you know, I did a whole video on it a while back. It was already so impressive that they were just digging into the indies like this. The whole Nindies thing, and now they do whole entire showcases, basically whole Nintendo Directs just to show off indie games. They're working so hard to make the Switch a perfect indie machine, and it's amazing, and it's turning out this amazing stuff. They're, you know, letting games onto their platform that they never would have let before. You know, even just Cuphead. They would not have let Cuphead last gen on any of their systems. Just, you know, because you had like, well, I mean, you know, you like Binding of Isaac. They didn't want it because of the religious overtones. And so now you have Cuphead, who the bad guy is the devil. He's the actual devil, but they're just like, whatever, all these different games with violence and religious stuff, and it doesn't even matter. They're just letting whoever do whatever. And it just says even more that not only are they willing to work with these guys and get their games on the system and kind of just, you know, curate a really nice library of indie games, now they're doing stuff like this. Now they are working with indie studios, relatively small ones, to make crossover games, to give them their IPs and just be like, make a Zelda version of this, you know? And I just think that's incredible. That's really, really awesome. It's so forward thinking of them, you know what I mean? Like I don't know, they just used to be a little stubborn. They didn't like anything that they couldn't control, but this is them giving up control and just saying like, yes, like we're all a big happy gaming family. I know I'm just pretty excited. I'm starting to sound a little weird here, but it's just an open-mindedness that I did not feel that they had before that I feel that they have now. And it is really, really, really beneficial. And I have no idea what that looks like in the future. You know what I mean? Like what other kinds of crossovers can we see? I don't think yet that we're gonna have a lot of people, because I know they're pretty hesitant to give their IP to another studio to have them do a mainline game. We have seen it a few times. I've said that I want it more, like Samus Returns, that kind of thing. I want them to do it more. I don't think they're gonna quite start giving out, you know, they're not gonna be going to an indie studio and being like, here's Zelda, make an actual like full-on Zelda game. I think they're still not quite at that point. I know the guys who made It'll Do and It'll Do 2, I'm pretty sure it was them. They mentioned actually taking It'll Do as a concept of Zelda to Nintendo and being like, will you let us make Nintendo? And they were like, no. So like, okay, we'll just make our own Zelda game, basically. So I still don't think they're gonna go quite that far. But as far as just nice, fun crossover content goes, who knows? Sky's the limit. And you know what? I was poking fun at myself for only wanting to play Crypt of the Necrodancer now because it's got Zelda on it, you know, because I'm just like a kid buying a Avengers pillow or whatever. But you know what? It actually looks in its own way really good. Like, okay, first off, those graphics are gorgeous. Oh my gosh, have you seen this trailer? These pixel graphics, oh, they're amazing, they're amazing. And I've always loved when another company gets to do a Nintendo thing and they get to do their own versions of it, you know, their own depictions of these just things, these monsters and stuff that we've seen so many times before. So I love seeing their versions of all the monsters. It's just, yeah, the pixel art is really, really gorgeous. And I love that you're using all the different items from Zelda. Like, that's genius. And dude, that soundtrack, oh my gosh, that remix, that Tall Heights remix in the trailer, oh, impeccable. It shouldn't matter that much, but the fact that they used that song, that's one of the best Zelda songs ever. And they were just like, that's the one reason in the trailer. Probably the best Zelda overworld theme. There's a lot of them. That one is so good. Point is, though, on the description, it's like 25 different tracks. So we're going to get 25 awesome dancey remixes of Zelda songs. And oh, that is exciting, man. The soundtrack for this game is going to be worth the price of admission alone. But that's all I have to say. I really just wanted to convey my excitement over this. How just interesting it is. How thought-provoking this idea is. It's really, I mean, like, I'm going to keep still kind of buzzing about this, just thinking about the possibilities. So I hope you all have a good day. You make sure to eat some vegetables today. You gotta eat vegetables every day, okay? Like, you don't have to go crazy or anything. Just make it a habit, you know? At least at dinner, eat some vegetables. It's really important and I care about you, all right? Broccoli's good. Broccoli and garlic. That's what I do. See you later.